Hey YouTubers, RC Mike. I've got a couple of requests to kind of explain how this winch and control system works. We're using the TQ4 channel radio that comes with Summit. Anyway, what we've done here is, zoom in on the switch, we've replaced the stock red toggle switch. This is what you guys are familiar with. This is a two-way switch designed to operate your first and second gear on like an Emax, or your reverse and forward on a T-Max. So that's what that's designed to do. Problem with this, it's either one way all the way or the other way all the way. What we've done here is replace that switch, and this is what the switch looks like inside. This is the switch, and this is the little board. Basically all it is a two-way switch, but it doesn't have a center neutral spot. So it's either one way or the other way. So you can't have it neutral in the middle. Whereas this switch, momentarily one way or the other. So you can just momentarily hold it and it'll run your winch. This is what the switch looks like that's inside here, and basically all it is three prongs with a neutral, the switch. So this switch, it's either one way or the other way, and that's all that switch does, and it's momentary, so it doesn't stay in place, whereas this one, you've got one or the other. So the three wires inside the radio are hooked to these terminals here, these three right here, and what you need to do is disconnect these three wires here. The center one goes to the center of your rocker switch, and then the two outer ones solder to your end terminals. So basically you're hooking up the same way, just with a different style of switch. If you manipulate this switch and you set it in the center, your servo will center like that, because it doesn't know what to do. But once the switch throws, it goes all the way one way. So it's basically the same thing as this switch, except this one has a neutral center. So what we've got inside our truck, three racing, is this a three racing? Yeah. So what we've got inside our truck is this three racing winch control. So this radio is operating on the third channel, your receiver. This is going to plug into your battery source. What we've done on this truck here, zoom in on here, we have our three racing controller inside this box right here. It's sitting right inside there. This wire right here, you can kind of see this wire here is the power wire that goes to the controller, and then it goes underneath here and it plugs in right to our speed control. You can see this wire right here, that is scabbed into our power on our speed control, and then the other side is right underneath this piece of heat shrink tubing. So we've got, you can just barely see it, it's right here. That's where our other power lead that goes to our three racing winch. So it's getting constant power from the battery, and then I don't have to mess around with plugging this into a separate source, and the battery on the truck is plugged into the regular speed control, so you don't have to mess around with that. So this is all
have to have two batteries on the car.
Right, this is all hooked up. So when you plug in your car, the whole thing turns on, your racing winch turns on, and then this lead, the one that comes out, zoom in on this, This lead here goes to your winch, and that's what's going to power the winch. Now what we've done on this truck here is that power lead goes to this switch here, which is basically just a two-way switch that converts power from our rear winch to our front winch. So we've got two winches on here, and one operate at a time. So if we push this and we let out the back, this switch operates our rear winch. So you can see how that works. And then if we switch this little switch to the front, then we operate our momentary, and the front winch comes out. So in order to bypass this switch, you would have to have another channel with another rocker switch, and we're usually only using one winch at a time. Go ahead and zoom out. So we just manually flip either the front or the back so we can power whichever winch we want to use, and then it works pretty good like that. So that's how that all works. Other than that, the problem with this TQ4 is that the third channel does not have a trim. So far this is the only controller I've gotten to work. The 3 racing controller hooks straight up, no problems. This is a RC 4-wheel drive winch control. This one has a center pot, which is a centering mixing pot, but this one does not work near as good. Your winch will drift, which basically means it will slowly let itself out because it doesn't quite center perfectly or stay centered. So this one doesn't work too good with this radio, and you can't change the center on the third channel, so this RC 4-wheel drive controller does not work with this radio. So you want to use the 3 racing winch controller. That works out fine. So that's the only other problem with that. Other than that, as far as power, these little winches don't have a ton of power, but they work. They'll get you over. It won't lift the truck up completely. Some guys are doing that, but you're really pushing the limitations of these little winches when you do that. And just for fun, this is a 3 racing winch right here. Get a picture of that. And it's a scale looking little winch. And you can kind of see that operate. We've got a antenna tube here in there, which flexes pretty good, and it allows the winch to spool up nicely. Some people are asking, am I having trouble with this center spooling? I'll give you kind of a quick example of what happens here. Some people are asking how this antenna tube is working and whether or not it center spools, which basically means the cable going around just the center of the spool and then just binding up. The answer is yes, it will center spool if allowed to. If under no load, it basically will center spool slightly. This is an example of the winch with no load. It's just pulling the string in, and you can kind of see it works its way back and forth. However, it does not fill the whole spool. And if allowed to just spool up under no load, it will do that. And you can kind of see it's starting to fill in a little bit, but that's under no no load on the string, and you can see that that's all of it. So it does fill the spool, and it does kind of go back and forth okay, and it doesn't really bind up or anything. I've got about 4 feet, maybe 5 feet of line on this spool, and it seems to be working okay. I'm going to show you with it under load the difference on how it spools up. So okay, now we're going to give it a little bit of resistance, and you'll see kind of how the antenna tube starts to move back and forth a little more. So once we start going in, and I give the winch a little bit more resistance on the line, which is what you're going to be doing when you're using it, that antenna tube starts to move back and forth a little bit better, and it wants to kind of spool a little more correctly. So under load it tends to transition back and forth a little bit better, and it fills the spool a little bit better than it would under no load. So the answer is basically the tube is just to prevent the line from getting caught up underneath the chassis and any sticks or rocks or whatever from hooking that line, and it just sort of guides it through this cross member and from the fair lead here to the winch. So it just kind of makes it a little more clean and prevents us from having any problem with that thing getting hung up on anything. So anyway, that's the demonstration of the winch, and it seems to be working out very, very well. And it's kind of fun to have this rear winch. If you get into a bind and you want to back out, you can hook up to another car and kind of pull yourself out. So that's kind of fun. Or use it as a tow rope, to pull something else out. So it's just sort of a neat little feature. It's what comes on the free racing winch, and it's much stiffer. It's a little bit bigger, and it's really hard. The line is really hard, and it's okay, but it's not very long. Let's zoom out. This free racing winch line is probably, I want to say, maybe it's like 3 feet or so. So it doesn't work near as good. So we replace it with this Gorilla line. It's about the same size, and it's way, way stronger. We also have the RC 4-wheel drive line.
Yeah, the cable, which
yeah, the wire cable, those don't work at all. Those
it's cool and all, but it doesn't.
They bird's nest on the winch, which means they spool out and then they get all tangled up. So the wire lines, those don't work at all, and they're really stiff. So you want to avoid that. But anyway, hopefully that helps with a little bit more understanding of how this winch is put together and how it works. So anyway, that's kind of a little more of an example of how our winches work and our setup. So we'll go ahead and go in the setup we're using. So, and it seems to be working for us real nice. So in any event, if you want to see anything else, just let us know and we'll try to help you out.